The teacups remained hot. The almond biscuits I made the previous evening were in the porcelain plate, unaltered. It was precisely 7 p.m. when Thomas typically went through the door, but he refused to do so this time. I nearly spent more time staring at the front door than I would like to admit, looking forward to hearing his key spin in the lock. However, there was just quite the kind of quiet that when something is permanently gone, it becomes ingrained in the bones. I'm Julia Carter, and for 15 years I thought I had the kind of union that many coveted. William was the type of man who was composed and successful, who brought a sense of stability to any space he walked into. He never spoke louder. He never arrived late. He wore clean button-downs, never let me worry about the mortgage, and sent me flowers on Sundays. We weren't in possession off kids. Life proceeded as though we were two parts of a puzzle that just fit together. However, I was soon to discover that there were parts missing from the puzzle. Additionally, one of them was concealed in a location I was never permitted to visit. On a Thursday, William passed away. It was a heart attack, they explained. I recall Thefus of the doctor when he stated that. Gentle, practiced, and aloof, Enormous Heart called it an infarction. He moved fast. I nodded as though I comprehended, as if it mattered any variation. However, it didn't. Not after losing the only person you believed to know you well. The burial service was a blur. A flurry of black clothing, courteous sympathies, and strange face expressing to me how amazing my hubby had been. My dearest friend from college, Claire, kept giving me water while I clutched to her. I abstained from drinking and eating, not until my sister Kiara showed up. Her scent was too sweet. Her embrace lasted too long. Something changed in me because of that. I apologize so much, sis. She with a somewhat smooth voice, she whispered. To me, William was like a brother. I wished to trust her. I did. But there was something about the way she gazed at me. It wasn't sorrow. Later that night, she said, "Hey, I know it's not the time, but William loaned me money," while pouring herself a drink in my kitchen. I looked at her, hoping to resolve it now that you're taken care of. I said, "What money?" And she blinked before grinning as if I were being goofy. "Oh, to suppose he didn't tell you." I couldn't sleep that night and continued to stroll through our home, feeling the bookshelves, the gleaming floors, the furnishings as if it would reveal something. I noticed them in a framed wedding picture that seemed to belong to strangers. William's keys were still the one-shaped key that I was never permitted to use. Was on the hallway table when I picked them up. I had once inquired about the key to his garage, which was different from the others. Years ago. "It's just tools," he remarked with a smile. "Nothing interesting in there." That was our situation, Grace. You wouldn't like it. I never pressed marriage. Simple, cozy, and plenty of quiet areas I was not allowed to be in. I had nothing to lose now, though, and I drove out to the garage the following morning, behind a line of dilapidated structures with rusty roofs and weeds growing through. It was in the former industrial area, the type of environment you wouldn't expect a man like William to be in. With crumbling asphalt, came here once a week on Thursdays, like clockwork, but I kept everything. The metal door was heavier than I anticipated, but I never questioned it. The key turned with a grudging moan, and I stood there for a while, terrified of what I might discover on the opposite side. It had an oily and dusty scent. I grabbed for the light switch and froze. It was a temple to a life I never knew, not a garage filled with tools, boxes, or auto parts. I walked slowly inside, aware that it existed, and the fluorescent lights flashed to life above, illuminating the most bizarre chamber I had ever seen with a pale radiance. Photographs. News articles, hand-drawn charts, and travel maps were all over the walls. Numerous printed photographs were arranged in tidy rows on one wall, resembling an obsessive collage, and each and every onion of them included William. But it wasn't the William the first knew. He wasn't wearing his typical fitted clothes or a refined manner. He appeared different, at ease, wearing jeans, casual clothing, untidy hair, a softer face, less defensive stance. And Inna was standing next to the same woman in nearly all of the pictures. Lovely, dark-haired, sharp, and at least 10 years younger than me, her touch on his arm, his face, and her perceptive eyes were too close. They were at the beach in one picture, in a ski lodge in another, and he turned to face her with a smile I hadn't seen in years. Then, over dinner, one at a candle, some of which had scrawled timestamps from 7 years ago on the reverse. 5/3, August 2024, a few months ago, was the one that really got me. Because I was waiting for him to get home from a client meeting that day. While preparing his favorite lunch at home. Currently, I was viewing a picture of him seated next to a woman and a male in his early 30s. A name was written in weak letters on the back, and they were all grinning like a family. Isabel and Logan. August 2024. William's handwriting. My knees gave out. I saw the papers files piled high when I reached for the metal desk in the middle of the room to study myself. Corporate documents, bank transactions, communications from foreign companies, and tax materials that were inconsistent with what I knew about his company, and a medical report in one folder. The header. It was dated less than 2 months ago and was from Crescent Heart Institute. Discovered that William's entire name was printed at the top, followed by the diagnosis ischemic heart something I could not pronounce. Illness. Stage 3, cardiac. Rest danger. Hello. He was aware that was aware that I was dying, and rather than speaking to me or getting me ready, instead of spent his final days creating a secret world with a different woman and a different existence without ever implying the reality. My gut churned. 15 years, 15 children, because the young man in the picture had to be their son. I supported him for years, yet the man I buried wasn't actually my spouse, was a stranger. The night before he passed away, a stranger who had seen my eyes gave me a velvet box with a sapphire necklace within. You're the only one, she said, kissing my cheek. For me. I stumbled back to the door, gasping for air, my chest feeling me. Mind was racing, tense. What should I do with this? Who was I now? A widow. Yes, but of whom? I heard faint, cautious footsteps, as if the person didn't want to be quickly spun around after hearing it. My heart hammering. My ribs as I stood up. The young man from the picture was standing in the open doorway. He had the same black hair, and his quiet voice was accompanied by the same focused, inscrutable eyes and a pointed jawline. But at first, I couldn't really take in the words because my heart was beating too loudly in my ears. Vivian Carter, he said. I didn't respond. I hoped you would stop by. He said, I'm Logan Myers, and cautiously entered. My name was William Carter. Dad. The floor vanished beneath me in an instant. I can't recall what I initially stated. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps. I simply stood there, holding onto the side off desk as if it were the last remaining solid object. Like he knew, Logan moved forward with composure, but caution. This was a delicate area. I looked at him, searching as much as I saw him. There was no question. They were William's eyes. The same focused stare. The memoir was said in silence then. In words. You truly are his son. I was able to whisper at last. Logan said without hesitation, yes. Additionally, I may apologize. This is not how I intended you to find out. How long have you been aware of him? My voice was just above a breath when I asked. My entire life, he said, without mentioning the apologize. All he told me was that he was married and that you were unaware of me. He kept us in great keep apart. Isabel, my mother, respected that. She had no desire to get involved. However, things changed after she died last year. Thus, she wasn't gone. I took a seat in the dusty chair by the desk, just like William. My mean legs were no longer able to support me. You're here. But why? I questioned. Why today? Logan took a folded piece of paper with yellowed edges out of his knapsack. He extended it, and I paused before accepting it, saying, "It's a draft of a will, unfinished, unofficial. 2 weeks prior to his passing, my father presented it to me. He stated that I unfolded this one just in case, but the official one would go to you." William's handwriting, steady and recognizable, was there on the paper, looping across the page as usual. It was scrawled, not notarized, on dinner notes and birthday cards. Lines separating assets. Logan was mentioned, referring to a business I had never heard of. Access to the remaining records of Mercury South Holdings, as well as one additional item locked in the corporate vault. I froze. The code was connected to a personal present that we received. The sapphire necklace that he gave me as a personal present. It was a key, not merely a present, given to me just 2 nights before he passed away. Immediately stroked my collarbone, but the necklace was not there. I had left it in its box at home. Because it was too heavy to wear. What is Mercury? It feels even heavier now. Logan inhaled. South Holdings? I inquired, continuing to study the page of his private businesses, not publicly available or documented, and he utilized it to transfer funds. Overseas. I began researching after my mother passed away, and I discovered transfers I couldn't track down and offshore accounts in my name I didn't open. I believe he was attempting to get you something. Forey was speechless. Why? Because he was aware that time was running out, and because he didn't trust the people he worked with. Logan replied quietly. Logan's face clouded as I looked up, but he never said what people, names, only that someone would come seeking for him if something happened to him. Knowledge, for power, for what he left behind. I reclined in the chair, thinking gracing a second safe, an unfamiliar corporation, and a potential episode code, and a man who had created a whole world and whom I had loved for 15 years, outside of me. Are you implying that there's more? I stated that the files, the pictures, and the will were all just Theligan nodded at the start. I believe he left stuff behind, not only for us, but also to safeguard us. I carefully stood, my legs still shaky, and surveyed Thefnal time. The chamber no longer felt like a shrine, but rather like proof, and me voice said, I need that necklace. I need to go home. Can I come? Logan asked if I could be with you. I hesitated, but nodded, since whether to didn't immediately return home, but whether I wanted it or not. This was artelnow.could in single quotes T. I needed room to breathe and think, so I contacted Claire. In 20 minutes, the sapphire necklace laying on the couch, my hands encircling a mug of tea, and I wasn't drinking. Like a live explosion on the table between us, Claire asked no questions. Never did. Not until I was prepared, and when I did tell her everything about Logan, the will, the garage, and the pictures, she merely mumbled, I'm so sorry. Without saying, I told you so. Reached for my hand, but I wasn't prepared to break down or cry. I drove to Kira's condo because I needed answers and someone to blame. It was a more recent structure on the north side of town. One of those upscale complexes with coded gates, underground parking, Strange for someone who had always griped about money and concierge service. She opened the door barefoot, wearing silk pajamas, and I could feel my rage rising with the elevator as it ascended. A glass of wine in one hand. Her hair was groomed like she had the ideal cosmetics look. Was anticipating visitors? Come check out the widow's place, if it's not my sad sister, she added smugly. Inheritance. I pushed past that and said, cut the shit, Kiara. We need to talk. Her into the living room, where I noticed a framed picture of her, and with a grin, and a champagne toast. William made my day. The date inscribed in the corner, what the hell is this? I screamed, gesturing to the stomach flip that occurred 5 years earlier. Frame. Kiara strolled over and sipped her wine slowly. Oh, that a holiday celebration for the company. Remember, you were too exhausted to come. She expressed it like this. William insisted that I accompany him. Was nothing. For example, it was quite usual for me to have champagne with my spouse while I stayed at home and folded clothes. Getting along so well. She continued nonchalantly. I looked her in the face. Precisely. Her smile wavered. I am aware of Isabel, I said. I am aware of Logan. I am aware of everything, including the garage, the phony business, and the will. Therefore, if there's Kiara's eyes furrowed as she approached the booze cabinet. More, tell me now. Cart poured her glass again and muttered, all right. Do you want the truth? I'm pregnant, she replied, putting a hand on her stomach and setting the glass down. And it belongs to William. My brain simply shut down. I didn't move or say anything. 10 weeks, she added. I learned a week prior to his passing. He was aware. He promised to take care of everything. And he even promised to leave Isabel shortly. Froze. Kiara said, you were still seeing him after Isabel died. I felt like I was flying, and she was never meant to be permanent. I was the one who stayed. Outside of me, the furniture, the walls, and the humming refrigerator all became in the background. I murmured, you slept with my husband. Kiara shrugged. Don't act like that. Astonished. You had your ideal home, your ideal little life, and your little dinners at 7 o'clock. In the meantime, I was working and had trouble paying my rent. Dead-end occupations. Hearing Mom compare us as if I were a failed version of you. And then William began to appear. She looked up at me, her eyes suddenly alert, listening, offering assistance. You were his routing. I was his escape. Before I knew I had lifted my hand, I was smacked. Kiara's head jerked sideways, and her wine glass fell to the ground. Now there's the real Vivin, she said with a smile rather than a cry or a shout. Not the prim-perfect wife, she said. The woman who recently discovered she's been breathing heavily and trembling my hands. I turned aside and said, why didn't you tell me? Because you never would have believed me. I said quietly now. You always assumed I was jealous, he added. Perhaps I was. However, this wasn't regarding you. I was finally able to acquire myself something with this. I gave a head shake. It wasn't just something you took. Everything was stolen by you. Her face became unreadable as she approached. Say what you desire. But that child is developing inside of me. They are members of your family, regardless of your feelings about it. My throat constricted. I wanted to break and shout. Items to go back in time. However, I stated, I'll respect what William left in his will. They didn't request this mess. So it's not for you or the baby. Kiara blinked. For the first time, her voice grew softer. You mean that? Don't understand? I muttered. But I know this. I need to leave. You ignoring the crunching of glass beneath my sneakers, I headed toward the door. I gripped the handle with shaking fingers, disregarding William did. I wasn't sure anymore. So I didn't respond. I didn't return home. That evening, with its immaculate bed and meticulously laid up dinner clothes, I couldn't stand to enter the house. Rather, I went back to Claire's, holding the sapphire necklace, tightly as if it were about to pierce my flesh. She didn't inquire about my whereabouts. She just murmured, "You need sleep," after opening the door and glancing at my face, but I was unable to sleep, not with my mind exploding in every room. The following morning, Claire came to. She said when Logan took me up in his vehicle, "You won't enter your husband's hidden." Safe with throwing her coat over her shoulder, she uttered the words without backup. William's workspace was in a downtown high-rise. He had consistently referred to it as only a satellite space when inquired. He had mentioned a place to hold private discussions. I never went inside at all. Logan, however, possessed a key card. He scanned us past security and stated, "I'm listed as a co-owner." The receptionist looked up just a little. William had created such a segmented life that it didn't require an explanation. The elevator ride seemed to go on forever. Logan took us to a glass-walled office on the 14th floor. With chilly, contemporary furnishings and no signs of warmth. Not one picture of me, not from my memories. Gray walls, smooth surfaces, and a faint aroma. Ophi have never smelled this cologne before. Logan indicated a sizable abstract their mounted painting behind the desk. That's the safes behind it. I went to my bag and took the jewelry out. I located the tiny clasp with my fingers. I twisted it in the opposite direction. Click. The sapphire pendant's back revealed a secret compartment. A thin metal plate that is no bigger than a SIM card is within. There were etched numbers along the border. Logan gently took it and inserted it into the safe's keypad. A quiet beep, followed by software. The door opened. There were piles of papers within. A little wooden box, a sleek black flash drive, and a single silver key fastened to a tag that said, "Bank Safe. Federal Trust Deposit." Logan produced the paperwork. Agreements, transfers, financial records. International banks are represented by a few of these names. He was moving, not just hoarding cash. It quickly offshore. I did not plug in the flash drive, but I did pick it up. Not quite yet. The little wooden box was then opened. It was a ring, a plain band of gold with a little diamond. My throat tightened each breath. I didn't own it. Within the band, a note. N at all times. Not me. Not VN stands for Isabel. "Jesus, beside me," Claire whispered. Logan looked aside, jaw clenched. I hardly heard myself when I said he bought her a ring. He intended to pop the question, or perhaps he had already. I was immobile, speechless, and unable to cry, because it was in the icy quiet of my deceased husband's office that I came to understand the fact I was afraid to mention. He cherished her. In his own life, he might have also loved me. Manner. However, she received the genuine portion of him. The section that grinned in pictures, that took a holiday, that chuckled. The remainder, however, was a performance. Roses. On Sundays, a well-groomed spouse with dinner at 7 and a full of secrets and safe. Logan then gave me a beautifully folded letter. My name appears on front. My hands were shaking as I unfolded it. "I'm leaving, Vivian. If you're reading this, I apologize. I never had the guts to speak the truth to you, to say out what I ought to have said years ago. I was self-centered. I constructed tulips because I was also unable to quit up. It ultimately cost me everything. It cherished you. That sounds empty now, I know. Perhaps it was always that way, but I didn't the only method I was aware of. I wanted you to be safe and at peace. For this reason, I left you the truth. the documents, and the access. As you see appropriate, use them, burn revel it all, bury it, or bury them. You have a choice now. I hope you will pardon me. I understand if not. William. I kept looking at the page until the words became hazy. I gave it to Claire after that. After reading it quietly, she gave it to Logan. He remained silent. Since there was nothing to say, none of you who asked did. The man we all believed we knew had broken like glass. At this point, our only option was to choose how to handle the fragments. Silently, we walked out of the office. The type of quiet that doesn't occur from calm, but from having nothing else to say. Claire was behind the wheel. Logan sat next to me while I gazed out the window, watching Charleston fade into an autumnal gray palette. My deceased spouse had led a life that I never experienced. The fragments of it were now in our hands, and we had no idea who else might be observing. I attempted to sleep on Claire's pull-out couch that night, but my phone rang. Unidentified number. The voice of a guy said, Vivian Carter. Yes, I did respond. Already tense. Gordon Blake is this person. I was one of your business associates. Husbands. I felt sick to my stomach. I think you've got something that's mine. I don't understand what you're discussing. You do. Calm still water, he remarked, the safe's contents. A few of them pertaining to foreign transfer accounts that I assisted in creating. I propose that we get together. I'm not getting to know anyone, he answered. You will. Because the other individuals William worked with aren't as courteous as I am. They don't inquire. He ended the call. I gazed at the ceiling, heart pounding. For a long time, I told Logan in the morning. He paced the room, his jaw gritted. He stated he also got in touch with me. However, there's more. Another person called last night. He passed a piece of paper to me. Crane. Victor. He asserts that he was the initial source of the money that William transferred. If we don't return, he said, there will be repercussions for everything before the end of the week. I didn't inquire as to what it meant. I must. Logan reached into the safe and took out the silver key. We still possess the box of deposits, he stated. Whatever's within may help clarify who is actually in possession of what. However, I tried to avoid saying it out. Do we really want to open another box? Breaking. What if it only makes matters worse? Beside me was Claire. At least then you'll be aware. Then not knowing it's what's killing you. She was correct. Thus, we formulated a strategy. The bank comes first. If it didn't make sense after that, we'd look for someone who is honest with us. William must have had a backup plan, a contact, or someone with knowledge of the misery in which he found himself. Logan then remarked, my mother has a name, Edward Holloway. Dad's former college friend was briefly mentioned. According to her, he was the only one who, despite William's reluctance to hear it, ever told him the truth. Are you aware of his location? I believe so, responded Logan. His address was in Savannah. According to Mom. She stored it in an emergency contacts box. Thus, we made a 2-hour drive in raindrops trailed down the windshield like memories in the solitude. We were welcomed by Savannah's oak trees, a moist air, and a sense of quiet that seemed to be unique to ancient town. Edward's large brick home was coated in ivy, as if it were taken from an obscure book. Slowly, he opened the door. He asked, "You're Vivian," without hesitation, "and you must be Logan. You knew we'd come." I responded. I gave a nod. "If it all falls apart, they'll find you," William warned. He stepped back. "Come in." The fragrance of paper and pipe smoke filled his home. The walls were lined with bookshelves, unplayed yet. Polished, a piano sat in the corner. He gestured for us to take a seat. then vanished into a different room before coming back holding a sealed envelope. He departed. This with me. Edward stated that it could only be opened if both of you were present. Collectively. I turned to face Logan. He gave a nod. I took the envelope open. There was a brief letter, written by hand, and another will. This one was unique. It was Khaled. Kiara was carrying a child. It allocated a quarter of William's personal funds offshore that was not disclosed to the child. After they became 21, I could feel the blood dripping out, away from my face. This was all part of his strategy. After that, I understood that we're positioned in the middle of a storm that William had constructed. Brick by brick, we now had the responsibility of surviving it. I gazed at once more. 25% of the will be held in Kiara Carter's unborn child's name. In trust until the age of 21. I wasn't astounded by the money. It was the accuracy. Everything had been prepared by Thomas. After passing away, he was still 3 paces ahead. Why wouldn't he name Kiara? But the baby? Edward was asked. Edward said softly because he trusted the child, not the mom. Logan moved in his chair. Everything is altered by this. Kiara is unable to touch it. That cash, not in a legal sense. Once more, I glanced down at the second will. Additionally, is Chetris. Edward gave the flash drive a nod. Then you make use of that. From what William informed me, that it includes thorough documentation of each transfer, each every crime they committed to construct this beast. Partner, you push back if they push you. Beside me, Claire let out a breath. You possess leverage. I didn't feel little for the first time since William's death. I didn't feel like the woman who had been duped, betrayed, and left feeling shattered. I thought I was alone. Power was the blueprint that was left in possession. Logan bent over. Vivian, I believe that we should stop responding. We must act before either Crane or Gordon do. Slowly, I nodded. We visited bank. Before noon, we returned to Charleston by car. The Federal Trust structure us awaited between a historic building and a legal office. Discreet and modest, as if it didn't matter until you passed it 100 times without noticing. Claire remained in the vehicle. Simply if it gets strange, text, she said, and weep if they refuse to let you in. No one says refuse to let a woman cry in a bank. At that, Logan grinned. I didn't. Within, the vault manager examined my ID, glanced at the silver key, and arched an eyebrow. No one has access to in-yours. This box, he said. It was registered under Mercury South, a corporate shield holdings. He guided us through several security door tiers and into the basement. Concrete. The temperature dropped. When the silence grew more intense, we were by ourselves. With the secure deposit box, he gave me a pair of gloves. Normal practice, he said. You'll have privacy from us. After us, the door shut. I ran my fingers along Thelic. Are you ready? Logan inquired. No, but I still did it. The key turned effortlessly. The box slid out. There was no money inside. No passports. No phones that burn. Absence of stacks of untraceable invoices. A single manila folder. And a picture. The image was of Gordon Blake, William, and Logan in front of a black SUV, arms crossed, giggling, and Victor Crane behind them. I gazed upon the picture for a long time. I suggested they were more than simply business partners. They worked together. Logan pulled out the folder. Shell business registrations, payoffs, dozens of signed agreements, and a single document bold red ink was used to mark the Crane blackmail insurance. Not only was it leverage, but it was a gun that is loaded. I mentioned that William kept proof of everything. Additionally, in that for a minute, I realized I wasn't merely left in a mess by him. I had a weapon he left me. I could now decide who I wanted to aim it at. We didn't return home. We visited the attorney. Marcus Doyle was his name, and years before, he had handled my father's estate. Simple, unobtrusive, and drama-sensitive. I informed him nearly anything. Not about Kiara or the affair, only the portions that documents. The threats and the offshore accounts were all legally significant. He didn't flinch. "Would you like to press fees?" he inquired. "No," I replied. "I'd like insurance." He gave a nod. "Next, we'll replicate both physically and digitally. Keep backups in 3 different places. Here's one. One is with you, while the other is with someone you don't know." "I am aware of Simply Thepperson," replied Claire with a gloomy smile. We scanned data for hours. William had maintained thorough records, including wire logs, names, dates, and fictitious invoices. It wasn't on the dodgy enterprise. It was multinational criminal operation. Additionally, Withey believed the evidence had disappeared with William gone. They were mistaken. When the day was over, Marcus had written a straightforward letter. I wrote one line in my own handwriting at the bottom. "Give me a try.vc. We couriered it to Gordon Blake's office. Within 15 minutes, he called .minutes. "You believe you're smart." Into the phone, he snarled. "It's too much for you." "No," I said coolly. "You're because I'll be calling the IRS next, followed by Interpol." There was a pause, followed by giggling. "All right," he said. "What are you looking for?" I said nothing. "All I ask is that you quit. No late night warnings, no threats, no calls. Youth folder becomes public if you touch me or anybody I know. Each and every file, each signature. That kind of difficulty is not what you want. That kind of trouble is already mine." I responded. "The distinction is that I'm no longer scared of it." He ended the call. Victor Crane called 2 hours later. His voice was distinct, polished, and smooth, as if he were accustomed to being attractive. His way through doors that were locked. He spoke as if we were longtime friends. "Vivian, I've heard about your findings. We're off to a bad start, in my opinion." I stated there was no foot, just a dozen illicit transactions signed by you. He chuckled quietly. "All speculative, of course." I let the silence to linger. "Next," I said, "Mr. Crane, I know you believe you can manage this, but here's the thing. Have nothing left of the corporation to safeguard, no reputation to lose. I'm extremely dangerous because I know life." That silenced him. I terminated the call. That evening, Logan and I sat on Claire's porch, with a duplicate of the flash drive in his pocket and folder hidden behind us in the planter box. Perhaps paranoid, but when the person you trust most lies to you, paranoia begins to feel like a survival tactic. I didn't realize he could do all of this, Logan said. My mother is always claimed that he was complex. However, I believe she meant sorrowful rather than corrupt. He was both, and maybe more, I said. Cold and steady above us, I gazed at the stars. I said, "We're not done yet. We have yet to open one more item." Logan scowled. "What?" The flash drive. The flash drive was tiny, unlabeled, and black. That unless you asked the correct question, it had nothing to say. Neither that evening nor the following morning did we open it. It required days for me. I spent 2 days getting ready for whatever truth lay ahead. I spent 2 days practicing my responses as though repetition might lessen the sting of betrayal. Logan took a seat next to me on the sofa. Once more, Claire brought tea. Nobody spoke while I connected it. For Julia, only one folder showed up. One video file, dated William's death was only 10 days away. After hovering, my fingers clicked. The screen flashed to life after going black. Not the William I'd seen in sitting across from me at dinner or in wedding pictures. William appeared to be a hollow person. His clothes was crumpled as if he hadn't slept for weeks, and his eyes were tired. He inclined a head. "Vivian," he said, "I didn't make it if you're watching this. Or perhaps I ran out of time." He massaged his face and moaned. "There isn't a simple solution. I'll simply say this because it's necessary. I never needed to conceal anything from you. I wanted you. I waited too long to safeguard. And now it's all coming together." He hesitated. "There's someone you should watch out for. Someone you have too much faith in." My heart slowed. He glanced directly into the camera. "Kiara is here." The room became silent. She wasn't Marilys Amin I made a mistake with. It was not that easy. This was something she had planned from the starting. It was no coincidence that she became pregnant. I informed her that I couldn't continue doing this that night, she evolved. Claimed that if I left her, she would use the money, the shell accounts, and he buried everything to protect you. He bent in. "I believe she killed Isabel." My mouth became parched. "I'm unable to prove it," stated William. However, the timing was too flawless. Isabel informed me that she had just packed her luggage and had purchased a one-way ticket to Lisbon. Next, the vehicular collision with only one car and no witnesses. They claimed that the brakes had failed, although she had the day before. The vehicle was serviced. He said while staring into the camera, shuddering. Kiara was aware of her pregnancy. Isabel didn't. That's what was altered. Everything. They called it an accident. No wrongdoing. However, Kiara was aware that pregnant. Isabel didn't either. Claire put her hand over her mouth. Logan's hands clenched. William remarked, "I tried to make it right. I transferred the funds, made backups, so that you would have power in the event of my death. I apologize it took so long. Harm for me to act. Last act morally." He averted his gaze, then returned it. "I was feeble. However, you aren't. And feel free to leave all of this behind if you so want. Give them what's yours and go in the dust if you choose to fight back. However, don't do it by yourself." The screen went black after freezing. I sat motionless for what seemed like hours. He was aware. He was aware of Kiara's potential. He was aware of the impending event. And nevertheless, he attempted to steer the story. Perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of remorse, even in death. However, he gave the truth to me. And now came the moment to make a decision. Kiara Dindy was aware of the video. I invited her to brunch, but she declined. Not when I told her how much I missed her and gave her a hug at the door. Her. How we ought to communicate like sisters once more. She had a feminine smile. Who believed she had triumphed? She was dressed in a light blue outfit that perfectly fit her tummy. "When I drink orange, he kicks." She rubbed her fingers over the lump and laughed as she replied, "Juice." I also grinned. However, my eyes didn't. We took a seat on Claire's porch. Logan remained indoors. After pouring us some sweet tea, Claire walked away. "I'm glad you reached out." With her hands neatly folded on her lap, Kiara spoke. "I was worried you were angry." I whispered, "Why would I be angry? Since my spouse was having an affair with Miss Sibling, or since you received a portion of his inheritance?" Kiara blinked. The first crack was that one. She moved around in her chair. "Vivian, both of us find this difficult." William felt conflicted and puzzled. "He did, however, adore you. No, I cut you off. I wasn't loved by him. I was pitted by him." Kiara winced. "I inclined and he was afraid of you." Her expression froze. "I put the flash drive in place. Between us, Kiara's mouth opened slightly. I am aware of the accounts and the manipulation. I am aware that he intended to abandon you. I am also aware of Isabel. She just said without blinking or moving. Nothing can be proven by you. Yes, I said. I don't have to, though. She scowled. I got up since I'm not appearing in court. I will not file a charge to remedy this. I will not advocate for a shoddy legal system. I gazed directly into her eyes. I'm going to leave you here with everything you believed you wanted and walk away. The child, the lies, the money. Kiara also got to her feet. Do you think I'm afraid of that? No, but it will. I responded. After that, I turned and went inside to find Logan waiting. I saw Marcus Doyle again later that afternoon, gave him theft flash drive, one instruction, and a signed affidavit. If something were to happen to me, the press gets it, everything. After that, I returned home to the house I used to share alongside William. Now there was silence. Nevertheless, I went around every room. Putting my hand on Thune never got round to repairing the floor. Board cracks, the door frames, or the backs of the chairs. I went inside the closet and left the other suitcases unpacked. Upon arriving in the garage, I secured the door behind me. I wasn't coming, not because I was concealing anything back. I took a plane to Colorado a week later. New name, fresh air. On Thelis, a small mountainside cottage. No safes, no secrets, nothing more yakking out. Julia Carter, widow, survivor, and myself alone. Not the female who wassled to, but the person who transformed quiet into